Hello, everybody, and welcome in to another episode of the Couch GMs podcast. It is Tuesday, November 6th, 2022. I'm your host, George Kerth. Cody Roadcap won't be with us. He's hiding in some enchanted forest somewhere or something. I don't know. He was very vague with his text message, so I'm a little concerned. But we're going to figure that one out and try to get him back for our Friday show. In the meantime, Tyler Snyder here with us. I'm glad to see you're feeling better, Tyler. And how you doing heading into the last week of the fantasy regular season?
Conflicted. On one hand, I am really sad and don't want this to come to an end. On the other hand, I am so ready for it to be over because it has been one frustrating season. So, conflicted, but you know what? I never give up. Even if I'm in 10th place in a league, I'm still going to give it my absolute all to win this final week. So, I'm ready. I'm ready for the push.
And I know in a league like our league of record, like we put incentives out there for the consolation bracket to make sure that people are fighting through the last week. Obviously, I know you're locked into a playoff spot and fighting for a first round bye in that league, so you're doing fine there. But another way just to keep league mates involved is something like that. So if you are a commissioner listening in, something to think about. If not,
Yes, and one PSA before we move on here. Only because I found myself in one of these leagues this year and it pisses me off. I'm in a 10-team league. I'm currently in 7th place, and I mean, I've told you my lineup before. You can vouch for me that this is probably one of the greatest fantasy lineups in the history of fantasy. I just came off to the worst start ever. Anyway, so I'm in 7th place right now. I am coming off a 4-game win streak. I am looking at not only taking 6th, I should be able to take 5th, but only 4 teams make the playoffs. Please, I didn't know this until I just looked. Please don't do this if you are a fantasy league manager. One, don't have your championship game on the final week of the season. Too many teams rest starters. Don't make the championship be a wash because of that. And two, if you're in a 10-team league, do 16 playoffs. Top 2 teams get a bye, so they get that extra added bonus for being top 2. But more teams have a chance to make it in. It just makes it more fun for the rest of the league. So please change that if you're a commissioner.
100%. The making it more fun for the rest of the league is where it's about, because I know the biggest argument for people that say you just shouldn't have a 6-team playoff is half the teams in the league making the playoffs is just too easy. But no, this is about fun. That's what we play fantasy football for. So now we can add a fantasy PSA to the front of this segment of this show. But other things we're going to hit this show, we're going to hit some NFL news and notes. We're going to do my favorite segment, quotes of the week. We're going to talk the week 14 waiver wire, trying to get you some wins to get you into those final playoff spots if you need, or get you set up for the playoffs. And we're going to talk a little Thursday Night Football for Week 14, which is a very exciting matchup between the Las Vegas Raiders and the Los Angeles Rams. But we'll get to that later. I know, don't get too excited. Make sure you find us on thecouchgms.com and our social media channels, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, at the Couch GMs. And you can join our Discord chat to talk to us 24/7. The link is in the description of the podcast or video you are watching. All right, let's just jump right in now to NFL news. NFL news, will start off with a little bit of talk about the NFL changing their schedule. So I knew that there were Saturday games coming, but now the NFL has announced a Week 15 triple header on a Saturday. So make sure you're checking your lineups early next week and even probably into week 16 and 17, because I'm sure that now that college football is winding down, this is going to be something that happens for a few weeks. We'll keep you updated with anything and do any kind of early previews that we need to, but just a little bit to keep an eye out there for you.
For the people who have way too busy of lives, this is probably frustrating because it gives you more days you have to stay on top of your lineups. But, you know, as a football fan, I love it. More football on Saturday, more football on Sunday. I mean, it keeps, there's more days that you can watch football. I don't know what more you need.
Amen to that. But we can talk in some other news, quarterback news, starting off with the Panthers waiving quarterback Baker Mayfield. Waivers will clear at 4:00 on Tuesday, and I know there's a couple of teams that have the ability to add him. San Francisco is one of them, who I might as well just tie this right in with our first bit of injury news, where Jimmy Garoppolo is now out for the season with a broken foot. I know the Rams might even have a chance to grab him. I don't know if they're going to, though, just because they're basically out of it. There's a couple other quarterback needy teams that might grab him as a backup, but I did not expect this when we were talking about the Baker Mayfield revenge tour at the beginning of the season. And it's really sad to see the major drop that happened, but He was playing like a quarterback that should have been waived when his last few starts.
Yeah, I don't know. I still feel like he's not really getting the benefit of the doubt. I feel like his leash was so short. Um, and I feel like if he slots into the right situation, he can still be solid. And I think the 49ers would be a perfect fit. I mean, say what you want about Baker Mayfield. Say that he's washed up. Say that he's terrible, whatever. I mean, is he better than Brock Purdy? I mean, probably. Um, but yet he would step into a team where he has Christian McCaffrey. He has, oh, well, again, because he would come for the Panthers, but he'd have Christian McCaffrey with Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, and one of the top defenses in the entire NFL. Like, set up for success right there. And you know that he can get it done when he needs to. He just hasn't shown it lately. So I don't think it would be a bad move for the 49ers to go get him. Fantasy-wise, I don't think that anywhere Baker goes really ups the value of any players. And as far as Jimmy Garoppolo, I think this downs the value for Debo and Ayuk. I think it actually ups the value for Christian McCaffrey. I feel like they have been airing it out a lot more than I expected. So I think they're going to go a lot more run heavy now. So McCaffrey should get an uptick in carries. But, when Brandon Ayuk and Debo Samuel were both fantasy startable receivers and George Kittle's getting involved, I mean, this sucks.
Yeah, the only reason I'm not super worried about the weapons in San Francisco is because this was probably the most quarterback friendly offense in the entire league. Like, the reason that someone like Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, can step in there and have as good of a game as he did this week is because of all those weapons you set around them. And because the play calling was never made for a guy who was going to have a strong arm and go out there and whip the ball all over the place. They set up a lot of screens. They run a lot of slants. They use misdirections. They think you think you're going to go to Debo and then now leaking out the backside is McCaffrey or whatever. So Baker going there isn't necessarily a step up over someone like a Brock Purdy. It's probably a step down going from Garoppolo to anybody else, but I don't think it's a major enough step down for you to really be freaking out about the 49ers or their weapons in fantasy.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? He's not the only quarterback to get injured either. We also had Lamar Jackson injured his knee. He is week to week. Um, the Ravens are another annoying team that just find ways to win at the end of games in games they don't deserve. And again, they're losing all game long to the Broncos. I don't care that Lamar's hurt. I don't care if 5-pick Peterman is your starting quarterback. If you're playing against the Broncos, you should probably win the game. So the fact that it took that long for the Ravens to finally retake the lead and take the win, annoying. But hey, they got it done, and we've seen what Huntley can do in the past. We've seen what he did last year when Lamar went down. So if they do have to roll with Huntley long term, I don't think Huntley's really a must pick up and start in fantasy kind of guy, but I do think he's a potential quarterback throw in with Bimageddon coming up next week again. And then as far as the rest of the guys on the team, I mean, look, you weren't starting any of the receivers anyway. Only guy you were starting was Mark Andrews and trying to pick the right running back, which we can get into that later, but
yeah,
not a massive fantasy impact here unless you're a Lamar Jackson owner.
Exactly. And I agree that Tyler Huntley's not exactly like jumping into being a top 5 quarterback, but because of Bimageddon, because of the fact that some people lost Garoppolo, because of the fact that maybe some people are worried about Trevor Lawrence because he did get banged up in that game. We thought it was a major knee injury. Also, you could do a lot worse than Tyler Huntley with his rushing ability, but we can get to more waiver wire ads and talks about quarterbacks when we get to that. Kenneth Walker was a big injury that came up during the Sunday 4:00 window. He has a foot injury, and we can almost kind of push the fantasy talk to this one towards waivers too, because you and I were saying we don't really have 100% definitive idea who the fill-in is going to be, but it is worth noting that
every backup for the Seahawks is also injured. So
yes, yeah. But it's worth noting that Walker's foot injury is not considered super serious. It sounds like if he misses time, it's going to be a game or two. But that game or two could be crucial for you to pick someone off the wire. So we can talk about that later then.
Yeah, but they're still talking he might even play this week. So
yeah,
we're definitely going to have to monitor that. Cortland Sutton was also injured. He had a hamstring injury. If you started Sutton, first off, why? Second off, he got you a 0. So that's a big pain. I think that hamstring injuries linger. So you have a lingering injury with a guy who's been frustrating and underwhelming all year long. I could see a lot of teams dropping Cortland Sutton after this week.
Yeah, and I wouldn't even be the first person to jump out and add him unless you like have the extra bench spot. You want him to be like a wide receiver 5 that you could potentially have a breakout game for if you're desperate. But honestly, we could be in a situation now where Cortland Sutton's not started the rest of the season, which is very sad from somebody that we were really hoping was going to have a breakout campaign. And then some guy who probably did start and maybe had a decent game out of it at least was Treylon Burks. He suffered a concussion on his touchdown catch, which, I mean, I hated to see that, even though it was a Titans-Eagles game. I don't like seeing anybody getting hurt like that, but hopefully he's back, good to go for this week. We won't know anything more until we start to see the practice reports and see if he rolls in a couple of limited practices and gets through the protocol.
I can tell you that the level of the grade that they put on this concussion, I did a little research, and it looks like these types of concussions that are this serious are usually 3 to 4 week concussions. Like, they are major, major concussions. So I would be very, very surprised to see Treylon Burks back anytime soon. And it sucks because, like, Burks was a guy that a lot of people were able to go get on the waiver wire. Hell, you might still be able to go get him on the waiver wire in a lot of leagues. But he has been solid for 3 consecutive weeks. Like, it has not just been like it was a 1 week fluke. Like, no, he is actually playing like a number one. He has been a solid pickup, a startable receiver. So to see a young guy with big potential go down like that, I mean, it sucks. And the other fantasy impacts on this is, I would say at this point, there is no startable Tennessee Titan. Not even Derrick Henry. Like, I mean, it's hard to bench Derrick Henry. I understand that. It's going to be next to impossible. But Derrick Henry's gotten you absolutely nothing for 3 straight weeks. Every defense knows he's going to be running it, and the offensive line has no offensive blocking. Henry has not been able to get even a step anywhere. So this takes another passing weapon out of the game, and it just makes defenses focus even more on the run. Like, I feel like if you have Derrick Henry, you're probably starting him, especially with Buymageddon coming up. And it's against the Jags, which isn't the best team in the world. But play him with caution. Don't play Derrick Henry thinking you're going to get that first-round pick again. You hope for 10 points, and I hate it being that kind of world with Henry, but you hope for 10 points, and there's not a single other Titan that's worth starting.
I'm with you that it's just Henry. I don't think I would go out there and bench him, but you're definitely not having running back 1 expectations anymore. If there's any consolation, like you said, they're playing Jacksonville this week. Then they have the Chargers, which is pretty sure a mid-tier defense against running backs. And then Houston, where you could go off for 219 again. Like, even though they can't block, Houston can't tackle. So there's a chance that those 3 games are still going to be good out of Derrick Henry. And then if you have other options for week 17 against Dallas and you're in the fantasy championship, we'll talk about that when it comes and see how he's doing these last 3 weeks. But he actually still scored more than 10 for weeks 11 and 12, even though it doesn't sound like he did. So it hasn't been as bad as you think. I think it's a little bit of pessimism coming out of that bad game. But you definitely have to start tempering your expectations on someone like him.
All right, let me give you one quick question here, okay?
Okay.
A healthy Joe Mixon, Ramondre Stevenson, Miles Sanders. Okay. If you have those 3 and you have Derrick Henry, do you play Henry over them?
I think it's going to depend on some matchups for some of them. Like, I know there's 1 week that Miles Sanders will play Dallas. I'd probably play Henry instead. I'd definitely play Henry in the Houston game. But other than that, like, I think those 3 could be 3 guys you'd start over Derrick Henry, yeah.
What a crazy world we're living in. This is disgusting. All right, moving on. Yeah, that's enough for the injuries right now. There were more injuries, but look, those are the big ones that we wanted to talk about. And obviously, follow our social medias. We will highlight you on injuries, how they progress, if any others pop up, etc. Moving on, it's also worth keeping an eye out that the Odell Beckham saga might finally be coming to an end. He might finally sign with somebody. At this point, I just hope he signs quickly so that we don't have to hear about it anymore. But let's go ahead and get on to the favorite segment of our co-host right here, and that is Quotes of the Week.
Quotes of the Week, first going to take us down to Atlanta, where head coach Arthur Smith, coming off of another rough loss, still in the chance to win a division here, was talked about a potential quarterback change after their bye in week 14. He said, quote, "We're about to go into the bye. We'll reevaluate everything. Every job is open." So I hate to see Marcus Mariota benched after, he's not exactly in the greatest situation. He has actually handled this season pretty well, but this Falcons team might have a chance to see Desmond Ridder, who could be their future, to get a couple of meaningful starts here and a chance to actually win a division, like I said.
Yeah, I don't think he should be benched based off of his play. I think he's done fine, honestly. I think if he gets benched, it means the Falcons have to admit that they are done going for the playoffs. And if they admit they are done, then you might as well play Desmond Ridder just to see what you have. Because he should be your future. But as of right now, I mean, look, it's looking pretty bad over there for the Falcons. They started so hot, and now they're just like, meh.
Yeah. So the bye does give it a little bit weird. Obviously, it also stinks that we're recording this on Monday night, and we don't know the outcome of this Tampa Bay Buccaneers game against the Saints on Monday. But there's a chance that the Falcons are going into, their next week with their bye, only a game and a half out of their division. Or should I say a half game? Sorry, my bad. A half game out of their division. So it's hard for them to say that they're going to give up on the season. But at the same time, you don't think they really have a team that's going to compete. Like, they could get a home playoff game and be one of the worst home playoff game teams ever with how this is going.
Yeah, I don't know. That whole division is just garbage. But how about we move on to the next quote? Let's just let's get on to a better team. Which it's weird saying this is a better team, but let's get on to a better team.
Well, two better teams, really. So we're going to talk the New York Jets, who just faced off with the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings got the better of them. Jets cornerback DJ Reed, who was covering Justin Jefferson, he had a quote in the postgame saying that, "I was in his shit all game, but he got that one root on me," obviously referring to the touchdown that Jefferson got in that game. Jefferson decided to clap back on Twitter and said, "In what shit? You can't talk having safety help. Call me when your coach trusts you to go 1v1." And then proceeded to change his Twitter name from Jay Jetta to Jay Jets.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
good old trash talk.
It's one of those things. I don't even have anything to say with this, but I think it's fun. I think it adds a little something to the game. It definitely makes things more interesting. I mean, look, let's take a look at the Rams and the Seahawks game from this past week. Like, terrible game. I have no reason to want to watch that game. I don't care about either of those teams. But if you watched the Jalen Ramsey and DK Metcalf just back and forth all game long, trash talking each other, it was phenomenal. It was absolutely fun. Every single route, those two were getting in each other's faces. There was personal fouls and penalties going everywhere because of the stuff they were saying to each other. There was one point where DK Metcalf went in motion. He was covered by Jalen Ramsey, went in motion, and Jalen Ramsey puts his arms up like, "Where are you going? Why are you running away from me?" And DK turns back and looks at him and waves him, says, "Come on, let's go, follow me." And DK went on to catch a pass, and they literally went on jawing the whole game, getting more penalties, and it ends on a DK Metcalf touchdown with Jalen Ramsey draped over his shoulder, and it was just an ungodly good moment. It was one of my favorite football moments of the entire year, all because of the smack talk going back and forth. Now, a lot of people like to say that smack talk should be out of the game, like, be humble, what are you doing? But when it ends up being fun like that, it makes the game so much more interesting. So I love seeing these kinds of things. I hope they keep going. I hope he changes his Twitter handle every single week just to make fun of whatever team he beat. But George, I think that's enough for quotes of the week. Let's go ahead and move on to the reason everybody came here, and that is the waiver segment.
And why let the trash talk end in the NFL? Why don't we talk a little trash talk in fantasy? Go ahead and trash talk your week 14 opponent, maybe the person who you're looking at lining up with in the first round of the playoffs. But let's get you there first, I guess, actually. Why don't we talk about the waiver wire article I put on the couchgms.com. Make sure you go check that out for some more info on these guys I'm about to mention. We'll probably talk a little bit about a couple of them and then give you a couple extra guys to hit as well. So in my article, I did talk about quarterback Tyler Huntley. We did mention earlier. He is a pretty decent fill-in if you have somebody that's on bye or somebody that did just get hurt at the quarterback position this week. Buffalo running back James Cook is another one. I'm actually going to come back to him. I have a little bit to talk about there. In Seattle, my guess for running back to fill in for Kenneth Walker, if he does miss time, would be Travis Homer. Not the obvious pick because he was someone who was out this week, but he has been the primary backup. It's a dart throw. We'll see. Cam Akers. I just laughed because of how much we were high on Cam Akers, and then he ended up being completely dropped. And now the fact that he's under 50% owned and decides to get 17 carries again, I don't know. But here he is. My one wide receiver on the article is Michael Gallup. Dallas's offense absolutely went off on Sunday night. And then tight end Greg Dulcich of the Denver Broncos rounds out my article, as we are always looking for tight end help, and he's been fairly solid as of late. Tyler, anybody you want to hit?
No. My biggest thing I want to hit is, guys, play it smart. Look, we are going to be honest here. This isn't exactly a crazy group of players that you're like, oh my God, I got to go get them. They're my league winner. Like, there's no league winner out there. It's at this point in the season, if you haven't broken out by now, you're probably not going to. There's still some guys that we want to highlight, and George will get over to James Cook a little bit there, but there's still some guys you can pick up that might be able to help you, but look at where you're at in the season. If you need to pick somebody up as a potential starter for this week because it's by Mageddon, there's injuries left and right, then by all means, please, like, we will help you get the best guy. But if you're like, my team's solid, I'm good for buys next week, I'm already in the playoffs, like, I'm looking ahead, plan accordingly. Like, go find a defense has a really good playoff matchup. Go find, hell, I don't care. Go find a kicker that's been on fire lately. Like, go pick him up. Grab a second quarterback just to be safe in case your guy goes down. But, like, play it smart. Go play the matchups. If you've been streaming tight ends all year, like, go find a tight end with a really good playoff matchup. Don't worry about just this week. Go play for the championship because that's what the end goal is. The end goal isn't this week. The end goal is championship.
Exactly. And honestly, this is not a bad time either, though. Like, none of these guys, except for maybe James Cook, in my opinion, are going to be league winners. Like you said, if you don't need anyone right away, maybe even go grab a running back handcuff. Like, if Alexander Madison's still out there in you for some reason, go get him. If Dalvin Cook misses a week, Alexander Madison could win you a playoff game by himself. It's just how it happens. So like that kind of idea too. And don't drop somebody on your bench for these guys just because you think you have to make a move. There's a good chance the person on your bench is better than one of these guys. But I've been teasing it. So we've talked a lot about running backs lately that have been slowly eating up more and more carries, starting to break out, and now they're finally doing something. The biggest example of that, Isaiah Pacheco. I was on Isaiah Pacheco for 3 or 4 weeks. He wasn't getting any more added. He was like fluctuating between 20 and 30% owned. And now all of a sudden he's got 2 weeks of 15 plus points. You knew it was coming, but you had to wait for it. The person who I've been seeing that trend going to more recently now is James Cook. James Cook now finally had his first game where he out-touched Devin Singletary, and he was involved in the pass game with 6 targets and 6 catches. So if you're in a PPR and half PPR especially, he's somebody that I think sneakily could get you a really good running back 2 or flex play in a playoff game.
Yeah, I mean, he's not a bad option. You also highlighted Isaiah Pacheco. I mean, he's finally starting to get the carries. He got a touchdown this week. If the Chiefs actually decide to use him, he's not a bad idea. Jahan Dotson, wide receiver for the Commanders. It's anybody's guess on who's actually going to be catching the ball for the Commanders. So you could do worse than Dotson on your bench. Zonovan Bam Knight. This is a guy that we have to talk about a little bit. Look, I will say that he's looked fantastic these last 2 weeks. I started him in a daily fantasy. Want to say I crushed it. I didn't. He did great for me, but Travis Kelce is the reason I lost because that's where I spent my most money and he did nothing. So who would have guessed? But
seriously,
Bam Knight has been absolutely solid for 2 straight weeks now, and I will say he is worth a pickup. If you have somebody on your bench that you're not going to play again this year, go pick up Bam Knight because the coaching staff obviously loves him enough that he is worth picking up. But there is some skepticism to have about him. George, why don't you tell me the skepticism?
So he was very close to going into my waiver wire column, and the reason I didn't is because of Michael Carter. I almost said Michael Gallup because I was looking at Michael Gallup's name for a second there. Michael Carter. So, like, I'm afraid that not only is Bam Knight not going to be fantasy relevant, but he's going to be enough of a split where he's going to make Michael Carter irrelevant also. So we're going to go back to those weird weeks around like weeks 4, 5, 6, where they were in so much of a split that no one was worth it. So he's been a boom. I know the coaching staff likes him. He's probably worth a speculative ad if you have the extra roster spot, but I'm not expecting what I've seen the last 2 weeks out of him once Michael Carter comes back.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. I think Michael Carter is definitely going to come back and be the starter, but I do think they are going to split carries. But is it going to be a running back attack that is good enough that you're like, I can play both. I can play either. No, I don't think so. I think they're going to steal enough of each other's touches that it's going to be like they're both going to be almost good enough to play, but not quite. Final person to highlight here, and it's not exactly a person, it's a people. But we have the Seahawks defense. We like to give you at least one defense per week. Seahawks are the ones we're going to highlight this week. They play the Panthers. Panthers are a crapshoot. I mean, what more do you have to say?
They just cut Baker, so.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you have a team playing the Panthers, we're going to look at their defense. Other teams, the Cowboys defense is still out there. Probably not, but if they are still out there, go grab them. They're playing against the Texans, but or the Chiefs defense is available in some leagues, not many, but the Chiefs are playing the Broncos. The Broncos offense is absolutely laughable. I'm pretty sure I could score more points than them as the quarterback of any team. I feel like our pickup football team from college can score more points than the Broncos.
Unfortunately.
But Broncos country, let's cry. Let's go ahead and move on.
Actually, I have one more person just to add really quick.
More.
I hate doing this, but I have to mention it because he's still only owned in 57% of leagues. Keep an eye on Rachaad White and your Monday. You guys know how he did on Monday night. He's probably somebody who is going to keep getting 50-50 or more in the split of carries for Tampa Bay and somebody worth owning as well. But I didn't like adding him just because he plays on Monday, but I felt like I had to mention.
Dude, what an annoying year. Like, every single team has a 50-50 split. Like, there's like no team that is just solely running with one guy. And those teams that are, like the Colts, Jonathan Taylor struggled all year. Mm-hmm. The Titans, Derrick Henry struggling. Like, you name the teams that have it, like Saints, Alvin Kamara, not doing anything. Like, the teams that actually do have a sole back aren't doing anything. And then every other team that has good running backs has 50-50 splits. Like, it's just, that's so annoying. What an annoying year for running backs.
It really is. So that makes it like the fact that you have guys that are getting 70% of the carries that are being, the top guys. I'm trying to see like running back one up until this week, Austin Eckler averages 70% of the carries in a game. Miles Sanders was a big breakout. He gets like 70% of the snaps, I should say, in a game. Like, it's crazy. It hurts, but we're doing the best to navigate it.
We are doing our best, and look, we will help you get to the championship. I can't help myself get to the championship, but I can help you get to the championship because I don't take my own advice. That's the biggest problem. I will tell myself this is the best move, and then I will take somebody else's advice and change it last minute and fail because of it. So listen to what I say, not what I do, and we can help you out. But let's go ahead and move on. Final segment. We got the Thursday night preview. This should not be a long segment because there's really not much to talk about. Amazon Prime, you are definitely going to get some good ones from this one. We got the Los Angeles Rams, Las Vegas Raiders. Look, Josh Jacobs
rundown literally says LOL, just so everyone knows.
Yeah, LOL is about as good as it gets. Look, Josh Jacobs looks good. Yeah. The only annoying thing about Josh Jacobs is questionable every week. Mm-hmm. He always plays. He's always fine. He's always killing it. But Josh Jacobs might end up being one of the best running backs this season. Like, you have Austin Eckler, obviously, is number one right now. But after Eckler, like, it might be Jacobs number two. And that's crazy to think. Because even Nick Chubb has struggled lately, like, not getting the points that we expected out of him. So
actually, though, I just want to mention, Josh Jacobs did overtake Austin Eckler for RB1. And then you're talking about the struggling Derrick Henry. Number 3.
That's just that shows you how this season's been. Is.
Yeah.
It's like Derrick Henry's averaging like 2 yards a carry the last 3 weeks, and yet he's number 3. Like, I can't. It's just, it's painful. But also on the Raiders side, we got Devontae Adams is really starting to look like Devontae Adams. Look, Derek Carr is becoming a potential startable fantasy quarterback again. If you do it, you're not going to feel comfortable about it. But we got bye Mageddon. We're missing a ton of teams. Another 6 buys this week. So this it might be the week you have to. We have 2 quarterback injuries with all the buys going on. You might have to play Derek Carr, and you could do worse than picking up him because at least he's chucking it to Devontae Adams half the time. So not a bad play there. Also on the Raiders, that's it. I got nothing else. Maybe
I'd like to say
Moreau on the dartboard.
Yeah, but Foster Moreau left with an injury as well, so I am not 100% sure of his status. I'll check really fast. I mean,
I want you guys to know that
exited in the first half being evaluated for a concussion, and he returned, so he's probably okay.
Yeah. Moreau is one of my weird crushes, and I don't understand why. But every year I'm like, Foster Moreau has to be the guy. Like, it's like George with Cole Kmet last year. Like, I want him to be the guy so badly, but he's just not great. So it's like he never really does become the guy, but I want him to be.
Well, I'll also just mention, like, if you're worried about playing Foster Moreau, it's not going to hurt you. I'll let you know there were only, going into the Monday night game, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tight ends who broke 10 points in a half PPR. And they were not Travis Kelce. They were not Mark Andrews. It was Noah Fant, Greg Dulcich, Evan Ingram, Gerald Everett, and Cole Kmet.
I hate fantasy.
Yeah. Like, I would say even out of those 5, like, one of them's a free agent. One of them I started. Maybe one other one of those guys was started if you're in a good league too. Like, no one got anything out of the tight end position.
So what you're telling me is by having Mark Andrews and Greg Dulcich on a team, I basically have a stacked tight end field.
You could have Cole Kmet and Pat Freiermuth and have a stacked tight end room at this point.
Yeah. Anyway, the Rams.
Yeah. I was just trying to stall from talking about them because I don't want to.
Is there anybody?
The Raiders defense stinks. If you're in bye Mageddon and missing 2 running backs and have another running back injury, you can throw a dart at Cam Akers. But yeah. I'm saying, like, he is like, if there's 30 people that you're starting between running backs and then the flexes, he is number 30. He is like down at the bottom of that. You probably have a better option. But you can.
Cam Akers is tough. Like, you know the potential is there, and you're like, they have no other options, so how is he not just, getting 50 carries a game because their team is such garbage? But it's one of those situations like Cody talked about earlier in the season where you could play him. He might do decent. He might even be one of your best starting options because of bye Mageddon and injuries. But I do also hate starting people on Thursday and them sucking, and then you just have days that you have to look at your team and be like, projected to lose, like, because they just went flat. I can tell you in our league of record this week, I had somebody absolutely fall flat on Thursday Night Football, and I had to look at that all week just miserable because I was like, there's no chance I'm going to win. This is a must-win week, and I'm not going to win. I ended up crushing. I had a 50-point lead by the end of it. But it's still, like, I thought I was going to lose because I had to look at that crappy Thursday night player all week, and it sucks. So if you can avoid playing people on Thursday night that you're iffy about, I usually shade towards not playing them.
So that goes right along with the whole, like, I know Cody has the mentality of not liking to play dartboard tight ends on a Thursday. The other person I was going to mention on the Rams as a possibility was Tyler Higbee. And I'm avoiding it if I can. But, like, honestly, when it comes to pass catching options, it's either him or Van Jefferson. It's a coin flip on who the best one is left. So you could do worse.
Yeah, I mean, Tutu Atwell is looking like a starting receiver because they ran out of other options to throw to. So if that doesn't show you how that offense is going, God, it's painful. But I think that's enough for this game unless you got somebody else you want to highlight.
No, that's good for me. I'm good to get out of this.
All right, guys. Well, as always, thank you so much for listening. I don't think you understand how much we appreciate that you guys come out and listen. We honestly just started this as a podcast as 3 guys that like talking football. So we're like, hey, why not make a podcast about it? See if, because we feel like we sound smart. So let's let other people listen to this. But this is the whole reason we do this is for other people to listen. We want you to get involved with this, though. This isn't just for you to listen. This is for you to be a part of. We want you to be a Couch GM as well. Let us know what your thoughts are. Let us know what you would like to hear more of or less of on this podcast. And hey, we're all ears. We're here to make it the best for you. Let us know what you did like on this episode. Like, was there any waiver guys that we highlighted that you're like, wow, I'm going to go get them? Is there any guys that you're like, yeah, what are you talking about? Stop. Like, shut up. You're an idiot. Go for it. Tell us we're idiots. Either way, this podcast is so much more fun for us and more fun for you when you get involved.
Yes, it is, Tyler, and thank you all one more time for listening into the Couch GMs podcast from somewhere in a forest for Cody Roadcap and Tyler Snyder. I'm George Kerth, and we will see you all later this week.
Oh.